in a series that is called Pioneer versus Settler. Pioneer, the idea behind it is that going out and taking new land. Settlers in this, we're not like posing that settlers are bad. I do think that there's a great kind of settlers, and then there's a not so great kind of settler. A settler that turns the wagons in and it's only about themselves. That's a dangerous settler. A settler that decides, I've gone long enough, I'm slowing down, I'm getting old, all of these things, but I'm going to settle in order to be a resource for future pioneers. The video that you just saw there, I Am Second, is a great brand, a great company. You can go to YouTube and see heaps of pop stars and athletes and famous people that share their stories, like Tony Dungy. If you don't know who he is on NBC every Sunday night for football. He's a pretty popular coach. He played at the University of Minnesota in college, played very well there. He coached for a season with the Vikings as well as one of the assistant coaches. So he's been around the NFL for a while, and his story's tremendous. He's on staff with a church that's in Tampa Bay. He's one of the pastors on staff there, works with one of my good friends. Just is a stand-up guy. But the company, the I Am Second company, the creators of that, they've been here to Unlock Church. They came and helped us do Unlock Summer Camp 2 years ago. They're from Austin, Texas. Robert is his name, and he came in, made a huge impact in the camp. I remember the second day they were here, him and his wife, they disappeared in our house, and there's about 25 of their missions team here, and we're like, where is Jane and Robert? Where do they go? They're older. They're in their 80s, and they were on a mission trip. So, I mean, just let that sink in there for a minute. 80 years old on a mission trip is impressive. But they disappeared, and all of a sudden, I go downstairs, you're into the basement, and there they are, sleeping on a bed that's in this basement. I didn't do anything to them. There's a lot of things that raced through my mind what I could do to two people sleeping that would be hilarious, but I didn't. I let them sleep. And I just remember Holly and I talking that night going, man, I love that our house is a place that strangers that have only known us for 2 days can feel at peace to sleep in a basement with 8 children or 7 children at the time running around, and a bunch of people from Unlock Church running around, and they just disappeared and took a nap. I was just like, man, there's something special about Robert. And we just got to get into a great relationship with Robert. And just knowing what I Am Second has done as a brand to tell stories and to spread the gospel is like such an honor to have him in my house, him to sleep in my house, and to learn from him, from this brand that captures these amazing stories. And I always jump on there because they're releasing new videos all the time. And this is an old video shot a couple of years ago. And I watched it, and I knew we were talking about failure. And here's Tony sharing stories about failure. And I was like, I know the outcome. I know that from that moment in the story, he ends up getting fired, like it said, from Tampa Bay, but then gets hired from the Colts. And he tells the Colts owners again, hey, God's going to be first. And then family's going to be first. And then football. That's the order. And, they all want to hire somebody they're going to pay millions to. No, we want football number one. And he's just like, I'm not going to surrender that. And he comes in as the Colts head coach. And he takes them one of my favorite Super Bowls because it was against the Bears. And they got just slaughtered in the rain. It was awesome. I remember I was like, yes, such a great victory. Knowing his story as well, that his life is surrendered around being a follower of Jesus. But also knowing it's full of failure. And the question he poses there, I pose to you before we're getting in the meat of this, is how do you currently handle failure? Don't give me the textbook answer of, I handle it really good because I know, every setback is a setup and you've got all the cliches and the textbook stuff. You got it all, right? You know what to say when coming off of or facing failure. You know what you're supposed to say. No, don't answer what you're supposed to say. How do you genuinely handle failure? If you're like me, probably not so good. I mean, I make fun of the moments I failed. I hope to learn from my failures, right? That's what we'd all tell the generation behind us. Just learn from your failures. But somewhere in our culture, we have attached that every time I fail, I'm no good, I'm not worth something, and we devalue ourselves versus understanding that sometimes we fail because we're trying new things. Like, that's powerful. To be able to understand that, no, if I'm not failing, I'm only doing the same thing I've always done before. I'm playing it safe. And if you want to be a pioneer or a settler that is about helping pioneer other things, you've got to stop playing it safe. You've got to be called out and go, okay, I'm going to do some things. I don't know how it's going to work out. And I'm going to give you a funny failure story. If you were in small groups the other night, I told a shower story. I thought, let's just do shower 2.0 story. If you weren't there, I'm not going to tell the first one. You should just come. You're going to have to hear about what's the shower story he shared. Here's my second shower story. When Holly and I graduated high school, we ended up going on an internship program called ACE Teams. It was a program where you took a year of school and crammed it into 3 months of college courses into 3 months, and then the next 6 months you're sent out on the road and you traveled all over the place, spending 1 month at a time at a different church. Well, we would stay in host homes with strangers, people we didn't know, and I was shipped off with a team of 5 to Texas, and we get introduced to this amazing house, and you never know what you're going to see. I mean, sometimes you see some things you're like, this is not good. I can't stay here for 30 days. This is too much. Some days you're just like, I can't leave. This is amazing. I wish I grew up here. Well, this house was a great house. I roll in, and they're like, hey, the only thing is that we only have 1 bathroom. That's fine. I grew up with 3 sisters, and I'm like, we shared 1 bathroom. Okay, that's cool. They go, but the bathroom is in our master bedroom, which is just weird, okay? It's like, what? Like, I'd rather you just get like an outhouse and put it outside for me versus if I got to pee in the nighttime, I have to walk through the master bedroom where the husband and wife are sleeping, go past their bed into, it's not like it was you just walk in and there's the bathroom. It was like, no, you looked over, you saw them there, and it's just like, this is so weird. I remember anytime I had to pee at night, I went out the front door and just peed in their bushes. I don't think I've ever told them that. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. There was one, but however, and this might be why, that one of the first days there, I wake up to take a shower, and it was like 5 in the morning. I walk past them, go into their bedroom, and I remember still this picture in my mind, just the way the room was lit, seeing these complete strangers. It feels weird. You're walking into the bathroom. You're trying to be super, super quiet because that's the goal. You don't want to wake them up. And I go in and take a shower, and it's one of those moments where I don't know how you like to take showers. We might give you a little bit of information, too much information about me. I like it hot. I like my showers hot. I don't like cold water. I don't like even to be hit or sprinkled with cold water. So you turn it on and make it hot, right? Well, that day I turned it on hot, got ready, got into the shower, and I forgot to check how hot the water was. I felt it on my back. I was like, ah! I was like, it's just too much. It was too hot. And I started running away from the shower. But I slipped. Okay, I started running in place. It just couldn't get traction. It was hot water, okay? And I'm starting to run, and I begin to lose my footing in the shower. And now I'm going to fall. And I begin to fall out of the shower, and I go to grab the shower rod. I grab a hold of it, and it comes off in my hand. And now I'm trying to catch my balance, and I'm getting sprayed in the back every time I move around. Woo! It's all quiet, right? It's like all silent. It's like, I just rotate out. It's one of those bathtub showers. I roll out. Shower curtain hits me on the chest. My feet are still in the shower, and the hot water is now running down the shower curtain towards my face, okay? It was hot water, okay? It was painful. And I got up. I looked at the wall. I was like, how do I fix this? I got the rod back up. I used some of my white toothpaste to fill in the holes on the wall so they didn't see that. And I finished my shower, and no one said anything at breakfast. I was like, I did it. I did it. They had no idea I fell. I was quiet. It's so good. This is great. Well, it's how it works when you live in a host home. The first couple of weeks is, you're shy. You don't really talk about it. But at the end of the week, it's like you're now family. It was one of the last nights at dinner, and the husband goes, I got a question for you, Scott, and we've been wanting to ask you since the first day you showered here. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, boy. They're like, what? What happened? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Just search some what are you looking for? Well, what happened that morning? Did you drop your shampoo bottle? And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, because I carry a 155-pound bottle of shampoo. That's the sound it would make. And I was like, no, I slipped in your shower. I fell out of it. I told them the whole story. They're like, oh, that makes total sense. You woke us up. We thought something terrible happened. I go, you never asked? Well, we didn't know you, and we didn't want to walk in on you if you didn't have clothes on. I was like, yeah, because typically shower with no clothes on. I did. Anyways, I totally failed. I failed. I woke him up. Here I thought the whole time, and I remember walking out of there with that, you just feel like this, ugh. I wish I wouldn't have fallen. I wish, and then I make it a funny story and stuff. And I got heaps more failures that I could share. I just thought, hey, I'm not exempt for failures. As we talk about it today, I've not got it figured out. I just know and understand that we should view failures differently so we can succeed, or it will paralyze us and we won't succeed. We'll be right where we are now if we continue to be paralyzed by failure. Because to be a pioneer or a settler that's going to fund the future projects and things of that nature by serving or whatever those things are for you, we must do new things. If we're going to reach a generation behind us, we have to do new things. I was having a conversation with somebody this week that the church in the Twin Cities, there are less Christian churches in the Twin Cities in 2020 than there were in 2019. Like churches are closing their doors and being bought by something else and being repurposed instead of reaching a generation. The churches are no longer reaching backwards. They're just maintaining on what they got. Instead of going, how do we go after a generation that doesn't want anything to do with Jesus? And actually, if you talk about Jesus to this generation, you get two responses: I've never heard, or yeah, that's religion, and religion's what's destroying the world. And you're just like, how do we reach? If we don't constantly try new things, we're going to get stuck in the same spot. It breaks my heart when I see for sale signs on churches. It's like, we'll take that. You just give it to us. We'll take it. We'll fill it, right? It's like, it breaks my heart because no one, however long ago that church was started, no one pictured that's the outcome. But some of the epidemics of churches closing is that there's this unwillingness to turn back around and try new things. It's holding on to what we have. I got a few great quotes to just kind of jar our brains on failure. And it's from a book called Creativity, Inc., one of my favorite books. It's about the story of Pixar. Such a tremendous read. It's all about, it's just pick it up. If you're a reader, you need something else to read, Creativity, Inc. So good. But here, you'll never stumble upon the unexpected if you stick only to the familiar. Think about Pixar. Pixar came in when Disney was creating all these amazing cartoons that were just blockbuster after blockbuster. And here Pixar comes in and go, hey, we want to do computer animation. And when you read through the book, how Disney stiff-armed them, like, you're crazy, we're not going to do that. That will never take off. And so Pixar kind of a little bit disgruntled with Disney's angst against Pixar. They're like, okay, we'll go do it. We'll show you. And they went and they teamed up with a guy with heaps of money. Steve Jobs came and invested tons of money into Pixar and helped them get off the ground and build a computer to do this animation. And all of a sudden, they were off to go build an epic movie called Toy Story. And when they went to go do Toy Story, they wrote it for an audience of 30-year-olds. Woody was a super negative Woody. He was a cowboy that smoked. Can you picture that, right? Woody smoking and being like, even 5 o'clock shadow on his face, and he was just a disgruntled guy, and it was super dark. And they sat in a room as they began to watch it, and they began to go, this is horrible. This is not good. They had spent millions. This is the beginning of their company, right? Like, this is what everything, and they came in and they're like, we got to start all over. And they all agreed, we're going to start all over. Tomorrow, brand new day. We got to fix this. We got to change some of these things. It can't be this negative. We got to change our target audience. And they begin this journey of changing it. But the next day, you know what Pixar did? They talked about has totally set off the course or the destination of their company is they threw a party the next day. They brought in a cake that says something along the lines, we lost a couple million, but we were trying something new. And they threw a failure party. Because they wanted a company to be built on trying new things. And if you try new things, you have to be willing to fail and not be paralyzed and not to sit back and go, I'm no good. This is where I got to live. They're like, no, we are going to fail so many more times. And as you read through the book, they walk you through all of the different failures that they've had. And they've had colossal failures. Like, it's a great read because you just get the behind the scenes and how things were working. Halfway through the different movies they've done from Cars and all those, at some point Disney comes back to them and buys them for like, I don't remember, it was just an astronomical amount of money, but way more money than they would have had to spend if they would have just said, I see where you're trying to pioneer this new deal. We'll get in at the ground level. They went and built something and made heaps of money, and now Disney and Pixar are married together, but it was because Pixar didn't get paralyzed by their failure. The best way to predict your future is to invent it. Instead of worrying about your future and being concerned about what's going to happen, invent it. Get out there and try something new. Instead of waiting for and reacting to what's taking place in yourself, get out there and figure out how to invent it. Yeah, that's a lot of risk, Scott. I might lose some money. Well, you'll learn some ways not to lose money then. We must remember that failure gives us chances to grow. And when we ignore those chances, it is at our own peril, our own demise. When we get paralyzed by failure, we get stuck there. Now, I want to use Peter to illustrate this, right? So you just heard it. I'm talking, man, fail, but fail fast. That's what we say here at Unlock Church all the time. Fail fast. When you fail over a long period of time, it's really cost you a lot. But if you can fail fast, it's now a learn. Somewhere in, I think, our educational system, because it's a pass-fail deal, we become programmed that, man, I fail, it's just permanent. Instead of, no, I got to learn from it. Because as adults, we have to reprogram our way of viewing failure. Instead of it's a finite ending, no, it's a point of reflection of what did I do? How can I correct that moving forward? You keep moving forward. You don't get stopped. You're going to fail. I have failed in every area of my life. As an athlete, as a dad, as a husband, as a son, as a pastor, as a mentor, as a mentee. I fail all over the place. I do. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is Micah 7:8. It's right before the New Testament. It's in the Jewish scripture. Micah writes these words, "O my enemy, do not rejoice over me. For when I fall, when I fail, I will get back up again." I'm going to get up. You hear it all the time. Some would say it's a Chinese proverb, but it's really a biblical principle from Micah 7:8. Fall 7 times, get up 8. Get up one more time, then you fall. If you're in a moment of, I have failed in my marriage, I have failed in my job, I have failed, get up one more time. Don't spend too long down there in the failure, because that's where you remain, and the results are going to be exactly what you are feeling. And Peter is the best example I can think of when I look at through the Bible who failed and didn't stay there very long. Peter is one of the 12 disciples. Peter was a fisherman by trade. He was fishing one day, and Jesus came out and asked to borrow his boat. And then after borrowing the boat and a miracle of fish thing happens, Jesus goes, "Hey, you want to follow me?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, I'm down to do that. I will leave my trade and I will follow you." And Peter was the guy that famously is known for sticking his foot in his mouth all the time, saying things that are like, "Bro, have you even think about that before you said that? Like, you're an idiot. Why would you say that? That's like Jesus. He's like God. Why would you talk to him like that?" You, like, as a reader, at least that's what I feel often. Or it's like sometimes people will read Peter. He's the guy that walked on water with Jesus, and then you'll hear people give him a bad, "Well, you walked on water, but you fell. Way to go. You did get out of the boat, but you got wet. And we've always said here, I'd rather be a wet water walker than a dry boat sitter, because the other 11 sat in a boat and did nothing. At least Peter got out and tried something. He might have got wet. But I'd much rather fail going after Jesus than sitting in a boat wondering what it's like to go after Jesus. Peter is the best example we got. Some cool things about Peter. When you go, you got the Gospels, right? Those are the books of the Bible that records Jesus' life. That's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Mark is the author, but he's recording the words of Peter. He's listening to Peter talk and tell stories, and Mark is writing down those. Most of Mark is taken straight from Peter, which is such a cool thing to think about when you know all of his failures. Then you have Peter giving people information about, hey, don't remain in your failures. This is what I learned from when I failed, and this is how I kept moving forward. He kept pushing them down the field, and Mark writes it all down. I think it's phenomenal. I love that about that. And so We let's jump into one of the first stories where Peter's failure of pride, I've got it, got him in trouble. He boasts he would never deny Jesus. That's pretty boastful, right? After Jesus just said, "You're going to deny me." Okay, that's pretty stout for a guy to go, I'm not going to deny you, even though Jesus, you told me I'm going to. I don't think I couldn't talk. That's Peter. And you can find that in Mark chapter 14, which I think is so important that it's in Mark because it's Peter telling Mark the story. Hey, this is when I was an idiot. This is one of my not shining moments, okay? It's his shower story, I guess. And so let's just read it really quick so you know it's not just mine. Sorry, the verses are not on the screen today. You just got to write it down. Mark chapter 14, verse 27. You will all fall away, Jesus told them. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I've risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. Peter declared. This isn't Peter said. This is Peter declared. Peter puffed out his chest a little bit, maybe pounded on a little bit. Jesus, I will never deny you, bro. You and I go way back, man. We walked on water together. I watched you feed some people with like some fish and Jesus, you and I are bros, man. I'll never do that. And I'm sure Jesus is rolling his eyes going, all right. Because here's Jesus' response to him in verse 30. Truly I tell you, today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, yourself will disown me, not once, but 3 times. He's calling him on it. He's like, okay, you want to be prideful and say you got this? You're going to deny me 3 times. And you read the story, he does 3 times. And then you know what Peter does? He takes off. Why? Because he's living in his failure for a second. He's like, oh my gosh, I just did what Jesus said would happen, and Jesus is dying. He's going to be, he's a hot mess all of a sudden. He begins to live in his failure. And he runs. And then you got to go, okay, so how does he come back to this? What's the restoration process? We're going to get to that. But Proverbs 16 says this in verse 18, says, pride goes before destruction. Before failure, there is pride typically. If you want to fail less in your life, be less prideful. Do life together with people. Pride says, I'm going to isolate myself because I got this thing called life. I am going to isolate myself as a parent because I can parent. I know what I'm doing. I know but that is a form of pride, of isolation. I got this. Humility is to come and say, I don't have this. I need help. Well, how do you parent in this situation? Or how did you do retirement? Or what did you do with your finances when you were? Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. When I was reading and thinking about this is what for most of us, failure comes with baggages, lots of baggages. That I believe is traced directly back to our days in school, and I alluded to that early. From a very early age, the message is drilled into our heads. Failure is bad. Failure means you didn't study or prepare. Failure means you slacked off, or worse, aren't smart enough to begin with. So failure is something that we begin to be ashamed of. And you see it here where Peter fails, and you can read the story for yourself in Mark, where he runs, he takes off. He runs from his failure, not knowing what to do. But later, Peter authors his own books, 1 Peter and 2 Peter. They're great reads because you get to learn Peter after all of the things you read in the gospel. And you get an insight of what he did. So Peter writes these words in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5. All of you, clothe yourself in humility towards one another because God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. He's preaching there. He learned that one. He's like, I got a story that I could tell, but if you should probably read the Gospels because you'll know that I learned this one. That humility, being humble, we don't say that word a lot around here, but humble, or even in our culture, I should say, being humble is having or showing a modest, low esteem of one's importance. That's the dictionary's definition in me. You're like, that sounds like I'm diminishing myself, like I'm putting myself under people. It's not that you are not worthy. It's that you understand that other people should be over you in importance. That you're not the story, you're part of the story. Jesus is the story. The gospel is Jesus' story and how he came to save the world. We are a part of that story. Our lives are a small part of the story. And when we understand that, we will behave in a manner that is of humility, asking for help. Or humility of I'm going to take a risk, but I'm going to ask for help so I don't have to experience failure as much. Humility means some of us might need to practice being humble. All of you. He doesn't speak to one person. He says, all of you, clothe yourself with humility towards one another. Towards one another. And then he just says, listen, God opposes. He's against the prideful. He's against that. I don't want to do something that God's against, so I want to work on being humble, and it is a work in progress. I hope I'm better than I was yesterday at it. I could go 2 steps back today. This isn't something that you get a button that says it's the humble award. I think that's the opposite of being humble, right? It's a constant battle. Every decision that you have to make is a constant battle. We need to think about our failures differently. I'm not the first to say that failure, when approached properly, can be an opportunity of growth, but the way most people interpret this is that mistakes are a necessary evil. Mistakes are not a necessary evil. They aren't evil at all. They're an inevitable consequence of doing something new, and as such should be as valuable. Without them, we'd never change. A lot of times the failures in our life is what brings in the change. A lot of times recognizing the sin in our life, that we need Jesus in our life, is what has brought us to Jesus. I don't know how to resolve my past. I don't know how to fix it. I've tried everything. Substances didn't do it. People aren't doing it. I need something. And Jesus is like, that's why I'm here, is to help you resolve your past, your failure. I hope today, just simply you walk out here looking for opportunities to maybe fail fast in an appropriate way. Like we were dreaming up new ways to do camp this year. It could be the best thing ever. It could be a disaster. And some would go, why don't you just do what you did last year? Because what if Jesus is calling us to do something bigger and different? I don't know that. We're trying to figure out that thing. And so we're like, oh, well, let's try it different. What if we run high school and middle school camps at the exact same time? Like same time, different schedules. Can we do it? I don't know. Sounds like fun. The pioneer guy in me is like, yeah, let's take the hill. Some are like, maybe a different hill, like that ant hill over there. Let's go do that one. We can just step right over it. It'll be good. But it's like, man, what if God's calling us there? You don't know unless you take the risk. And what if it's a total flop and we look at it? It's not going to be, oh man, we're done with camps. It's like, okay, that's one way not to do camp. We get oftentimes asked, how's Unlocked Church beaten all the statistics? We had a 4% success rate when we began. We had like even fewer to get to 5 years and all this stuff. And people are like, what is it? I go, we've just overcome tons of failure. And then they would ask why. Is because God called us. We didn't try something. We didn't think this was a good idea, like it's the coolest thing ever. We just simply are called by God to move from Florida to here, to start Unlocked Church. We're called. We're here. We're in it, no matter how bad it gets or how great it is. It's God called us. God's doing it. He's showing up and showing off. And that's what's got us through for 5 years. In a month here, there's an organization that helped get us started. And there was great partnership with them. But they did tell us that, hey, you understand that only 4% of churches succeed. And he was like, is that encouraging? Like, go get them. Only 4% have ever lived through this, buddy. You got this. It's like, okay. But they are inviting us down to Orlando to honor Unlocked Church for beating the odds. Yeah. And they're going to ask the story, and we're just simply going to say we failed a ton. And we don't have time to tell you all those, but we have postcards that didn't work very well. We had video ideas but you know what? The video ideas that we did way back in the day, we did this thing called Church on Demand. That was our first idea of reaching people in the digital means. But that's what's got us to YouTube, where YouTube is funding ministries at Unlocked Church. Our kids, babies, and student ministries funded by YouTube. It's the beginning where we started. We failed tons, and where we're going to still fail. God's going to keep leading us, but it didn't stop us. We're just like, how are we going to get where God's called us in these areas? We're going to keep moving forward, because that's the best example I can give to you on this topic is, man, we have failed over and over again, but we are not going to stop. Another area where Peter lost, failed, and then overcame was Peter was overtaken by laziness. You're like, how is that? How do we know that? Okay, author Matthew records, and Matthew's there, so Matthew's an eyewitness account of Matthew chapter 26. I'll just tell the story, write it down, and go read the story. This is in the garden. Jesus is just told Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times, and then they go off to this garden to pray before Jesus is to be arrested. And they're in there, and Jesus says to his crew, he's like, listen, I'm going to go away. I'm going to pray over there. You guys stay awake over here and pray with me, but I'm going to go over there. You stay here. Jesus goes, prays a little bit. He comes over, and the boys are asleep. He's like, what is your problem? How are you guys going to sleep? Do you not see I'm stressed out? Like I'm sweating drops of blood here. I'm really stressed out. Where are you at? And he's like, just stay awake, guys, for me. You stay awake and pray. I'm going to go over here and pray again. And he comes back, and they fell asleep again. And they're just like, Jesus like really gives it to him like, guys, do you not see what we're doing is important? Do you not value this? Like, it's a moment of failure. He couldn't keep his eyes awake. He didn't value the importance of what was about to happen. They didn't really understand what's happening, but here it is. Again, it's part of Peter's problem. He's like, okay, I don't value what Jesus is saying. Jesus told me just to stay awake, and I fell asleep. You're going to feel like a bit of a small heel here, right? But Peter writes later in his book, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, he says, be alert and sober-minded. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Be alert and sober-minded. Where did he learn that from? Because he learned it in the garden. He's like, I missed it. He goes on in verse 9 of 1 Peter, goes, resist him, resist the devil. Stand firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering. He's simply saying you're not alone in the suffering you're going through. You're not alone. There's other people that are followers of Jesus that are going through the same stuff. But be alert. Be alert to pay attention in your life. This is what he's saying here. Be alert and understand what are the attacks of the enemy in our lives. That it's not people against people where we often think our battles lie. Paul writes down, he says, look, we don't fight against flesh and blood, we fight against the unseen things. That there's things happening that you and I cannot see, and the devil wants to discourage us and make us feel no good and we're unworthy, so that we would not continue to be a bright light into the community. If we are dimmed, we won't share the gospel as well. But when we shine bright, brighter than anything else, we draw attention to ourselves, but then point people to Jesus. Our job is to be like the moon. You ever think about this? The moon at night, you ever walk out and go, man, the moon looks amazing tonight. You know, the moon doesn't look amazing anytime ever. It's just a ball of rocks. That's all it is. It's just this gray mass up there. It puts no light off. It doesn't radiate anything. It reflects the sun. The sun's reflection on the moon looks amazing. But sometimes we give credit to where credit isn't due. Our job is to be the moon. We are to shine bright, the reflection of the sun. And when someone goes, man, you look good, or you have so much joy in your life, that's the moment we don't steal the credit of the sun. We say it's because I am a follower of Jesus. Be the moon. Be a reflection of the sun, Jesus, who is God's one and only Son. That's our job. Maybe from now on, when you see a full moon, you're like, woo, the moon looks good tonight. It'll remind you to shine bright and to be reminded that, hey, I am a ball of rock. I don't look very good without the sun shining on me. That Jesus makes all of us look sexier. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? You can quote me on that. 2 Peter, so he continues to just kind of wrap up that thought. He goes, for this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and goodness, knowledge, and to knowledge, self-control, and self-control, perseverance, and perseverance, godliness, and godliness, mutual affection, and to mutual affection, love. For if you possess these qualities in increasing measures, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. I know I just said a lot of things, but here's what he's saying. Don't be paralyzed by failure. Keep moving forward. Take a step forward, not backwards. Add to your life. Keep growing. When Peter wraps up his second book of the Bible, 2 Peter, he wraps up. This is how he puts this profound statement and cap on this. 2 Peter chapter 3, maybe this is all you needed today. Grow in the grace and the knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Grow in the grace and knowledge. When you fail, you're going to need some grace. I've told the story when Epic was a teeny little boy. I don't have time to re-say it. If you can just go watch a video. It's in there somewhere. But taught Epic at a small age, hands on his face, what grace and mercy was, okay? Maybe I should tell the story so you get it. Fast version is he was going to get a spanking. I came in there and I said one day, hey, I'm going to give you grace and mercy, no spanking. This is what grace is. This is what you're deserving the spanking. But today, I don't want you to do what you did anymore. Stop it. And next time in here, you'll probably get a spanking if you're here for the same thing. And so we always send him to the bathroom. A couple days later, he does the same thing. Send him to the bathroom. He's sitting on a little stool in there, knees to his face. And it's just this little guy. He's probably 3 years old or something. Just a little guy just sitting there going, no one was going to happen. I walk in, and Epic in his little surfer bro guy kind of voice goes, Dad, will you just show me some grace and mercy? And I melted. I was like, yeah, buddy, I will, for sure. I mean, I was like, this is the best thing. I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And so I was like, yeah, man, just don't do it again. And I think a couple days later, same thing, he's up there again, and now he's caught on. He's like, Dad, a little less cute this time, just more like a little swag to it. I got you. I know how to work you, Dad. Dad, grace and mercy, can I have some? I go, nope. And I told him another value point that day. I said, you know what? People's Grace and Mercies has a bank account, and when you withdraw too much without depositing, you go into the red. So you're in the red, buddy. There's no more grace and mercy for you. However, with Jesus, it never runs out. It's a miracle, okay? So then last night we're playing a game. We're playing Ninja, and we're all swinging, and Epic's getting it all wrong, and he gets out, and he's like, grace and mercy, guys? Anyone? Grace and mercy, anyone? And as much as I could just put a smile on my face, here he is, 9 years old, 10 years old, I don't know, 10? He's 10. He got it, right? He's still asking for grace and mercy. Woo, what a powerful thing. If he attaches that all the way through his adulthood, right? Will you attach to the same thing? Because this is what Peter's trying to say. I learned from the best. I learned from Jesus. You know what I think the coolest thing is with Peter's story? Is that when Jesus died and rose again, this caps it all off. It's just like, whoo, that Peter, embarrassed by his failure, has run and hid. 2 women, 3 women go and look at the tomb, and they see it's empty. They come back and get the disciples. And then John writes down that the disciples all took off running. And John takes a moment, and you can read this in John chapter 20. John makes sure that we understand that Peter was falling behind. He wasn't in a hurry to get there because why? Guilt was getting him. He's like, I denied him. The last time I saw Jesus, I told him I never would. I fell asleep. I'm no good to this man. And he's falling behind. It says all the disciples ran in to look at the empty tomb, and then Peter just kind of walks in. And later, John on purpose makes sure that we understand that Jesus came to Peter and had a conversation with Peter. And he says to him, Peter, these are Jesus' words. After we had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Their context is before, but he just said, do you love me more than all of this stuff? And he says, yes, Lord, he said. And you know that I love you, Jesus said. Feed my lambs. Jesus makes sure he talks to Peter and says, you know I love you. Now go do what I taught you to do. He just gave him grace. He said, I saw your failures and all your bad stuff. I saw it, but I still love you. And it's the same thing he wants to say to you and all your failures. He still loves you. Go feed my lamb. Go. Be a light in the darkness. Don't let the enemy shrink you back and dim your light. Go. Whatever those things in your life that have caused you to fail, walk away from them. Walk away fast today. Peter's our best example I could think of because we have when he failed, and then we see in his book where he's like, it's so powerful. May this today be the gas in your tank to get you going, or a kick in the butt, whatever you need today to overcome your failures. Young people, don't get paralyzed by your failures. So you might have to repeat a class or take something over. Big deal. You learned one way not to take the class. It's great. Don't hang your head to failure. It's the greatest teacher in the world. Just fail fast and don't be embarrassed by it. Never hide your failures. Because how many of us adults would say, man, I've spent too long hiding some of my failures in my life. You know what you do then is you keep from teaching the generations behind you how not to fail in the same area. You know, that's one of the defining qualities of humans to animals is that we can teach a generation behind us, don't do that. If we don't, then we're missing the quality. Think about Vader, best dog ever. Love that guy. If you're still on the fence about getting a puppy, you should probably get one. Just saying. But Vader, he's such a good dog. But you know what? He's the same quality dog that they had 2,000 years ago. He's not smarter. There really wasn't a dog that taught him how to be a better dog. He just grew up and he's just being a dog, okay? He just is. He's not better for it. But humans, we have this unique thing about us. We can go back and teach. I once did that. Don't do the same thing. Parents, don't be embarrassed by your past and go, I can't tell my kids not to do that because I did it once. No, teach them what happened when you did the thing that really messed up your life for a season so that they don't have to do it. It's not a moment of embarrassment. It's a moment of leveraging what you've walked through. If you come through anxiety and depression and you're on the other side of it, don't hide that stuff. Tell people, I used to struggle with that stuff, because then they can go, how'd you overcome it? Because I'm in the middle of it. How'd you overcome parenting? Be a light and share your failures, because people want to know how to overcome their failures, and that's being a bright light. I hope I've encouraged somebody today. I hope today you're going to get out there and get after it and do a little bit of work. And if all you heard today is that Jesus makes you look sexy, that's good too. Just don't forget, he does. He does. I think he does. He makes us all look good. He puts a smile on our face when you're going through some rough stuff. That's the beauty of Jesus. May we be the moon where we reflect the brightest moments in our lives. We're reflecting Jesus, the sun. Would you close your eyes and ask Jesus, what do I need to do today? What do I need to ask forgiveness? Maybe some of you need right now to have a conversation. Jesus, forgive me of my failures. Some of you need to openly admit to the failures instead of running from them. Maybe some of you need to apologize to some people because some of the failures have hurt other people, and you need to. That's okay too. Where are you at on this? Maybe some of you need to just be kicked in the butt a little bit and get out there and try some new things. God's called you to start something, and you're like, I don't know how to do that. It's time to start that business. Take that risk. Maybe God's asked you to move your house, move a house, and you're like, but if he's calling you to do it, go do it. Don't be afraid of failure. Jesus, I just come to you today, and I just lay all of us at your feet today. And I ask that you would speak to each of us individually today and give us the power to overcome our failures in the future failures, that we would look at them in moments, where did I go wrong here? And what do I need to learn here? And through our failures, may it be the fuel to keep moving forward. And may we learn from Peter here that your grace is always there for us. May we be quick to run to you and ask for your forgiveness. May we be quick to change and turn away from our failures. God, may we do great things and take risks and be okay not making it on the first try. That we would learn and know in the process of learning we're going to get where you've called us to do it. So today, may this be fuel to us. May something be said that would encourage those that have come in hurting, and those that are tired, may they go out with a restored energy. Jesus, I ask that you would do something amazing. That we'd hear stories over this week of how you showed up and showed off in our lives. Jesus, we absolutely love you. Thanks for being our best friend. Thanks that you shine your light on us so brightly that it warms us, and may we reflect it so well in every circumstance in our lives. Jesus, we love you in your name. Amen.